When we think of superpowers, we often imagine invincible nations that dominate the globe, shaping the world according to their will. For centuries, empires have risen with unmatched strength, technological advancement, and global influence only to collapse eventually. The United States, the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the Soviet Union each reached a peak where it seemed unstoppable. Yet, time and again, history shows us that no superpower is permanent. Today, we're going to explore the real reasons why superpowers always fall, examining patterns, mistakes, and lessons that every nation and even every individual could learn from. First, it's essential to understand what makes a superpower rise in the first place. Economic strength is often the starting point. A nation with vast resources, trade dominance, and technological superiority can project power both domestically and abroad. Militaries are built on these foundations, ensuring that no adversary can easily challenge them. Cultural influence, too, plays a key role. When a nation exports its values, language, and media across the world, it solidifies soft power, the ability to influence without firing a single shot. But here is the paradox. The very strengths that elevate a superpower often contain the seeds of its decline. One major factor in the fall of superpowers is economic imbalance. No empire has ever remained strong while ignoring the foundations of its economy. Wealth concentration, excessive debt, and unsustainable spending can destabilize even the most powerful nations. Take the Roman Empire, for example. At its height, Rome controlled vast territories stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The empire was rich, but wealth was concentrated among a small elite, while the general population faced heavy taxation. Over time, the economic strain led to internal unrest, weakening the state from within. By the time external pressures appeared, the empire's economic structure had already begun to crumble. Political corruption is another common thread in the decline of superpowers. Power tends to attract self-interest, and as leaders focus on personal gain rather than the collective good, governance suffers. Bureaucracies become bloated and inefficient, decision-making slows, and public trust erodes. The Soviet Union offers a modern example. Despite being a superpower with immense military might and technological achievements, the government's centralized control, combined with corruption and inefficiency, made it unable to adapt to new economic realities. When global pressures increased in the late 20th century, the system collapsed under its own weight. Overextension is perhaps the most visible reason empires fall. Superpowers often attempt to control too much territory, too many markets, or too many conflicts simultaneously. Maintaining influence across continents requires resources, energy, and manpower. Stretching these resources thin inevitably leads to vulnerability. The British Empire illustrates this clearly. At its peak, Britain controlled roughly a quarter of the world's population and landmass. However, managing colonies from India to Africa and the Caribbean placed enormous logistical and financial burdens on the empire. Combined with rising nationalist movements and two world wars, Britain's global dominance began to erode. Cultural complacency is another underestimated factor. Superpowers tend to assume that their systems, values, or technologies are permanent. This mindset leads to stagnation. Innovation slows, critical self-reflection is ignored, and society becomes resistant to change. Japan's Tokugawa shogunate in the 17th and 18th centuries is a historical example. By isolating itself from global trade and influence, Japan maintained stability but failed to modernize. When Western powers arrived in the 19th century with advanced technology and military strength, Japan had no choice but to rapidly transform, avoiding collapse but at a cost. External competition also accelerates decline. No superpower exists in isolation, and rival nations constantly challenge dominance. Military conflicts, trade wars, and ideological battles test the limits of power. The fall of the Ottoman Empire, for instance, was influenced not only by internal decay but also by the rise of European powers. These external pressures amplified internal weaknesses, leading to territorial losses and eventual dissolution. Demographic shifts further complicate the picture. Aging populations, declining birth rates, and unequal population distribution can strain economies and social systems. In modern times, superpowers like the United States and China face demographic challenges that could influence long-term stability. A shrinking workforce can reduce economic growth, increase social spending, and create political tension. Historical empires like Rome experienced similar pressures, where population decline in key regions contributed to economic and military vulnerabilities. Technology, which initially fuels the rise of superpowers, can ironically hasten their fall if not managed properly. Innovation gives nations an edge, but relying too heavily on past advancements without adapting to new challenges can backfire. The Soviet Union excelled in space technology and military innovation, yet it lagged in consumer technology and economic modernization. Similarly, empires that fail to integrate emerging technologies risk falling behind competitors, undermining their dominance. Psychological factors play a subtle but critical role. Superpowers often develop a sense of invincibility, creating a disconnect between perception and reality. Leaders and citizens may underestimate threats, dismiss criticism, or resist necessary reforms. Overconfidence can lead to strategic blunders, poor resource allocation, and ultimately, decline. Napoleon's France serves as a cautionary tale, an unstoppable military force undone by overreach and misjudgment of adversaries. Environmental and resource constraints also contribute. Access to critical resources, water, energy, food, is essential for sustaining large populations and militaries. Overexploitation or mismanagement can undermine a nation's strength. Climate shifts, natural disasters, or resource depletion have historically weakened empires, forcing them to adapt or collapse. Today, these pressures remain highly relevant as nations confront climate change and global supply challenges. Ideology and internal cohesion are equally important. Empires often unite diverse populations under a shared identity, religion, or political ideology. When this cohesion fractures, social unrest and separatist movements emerge. The Habsburg Empire, with its multiple ethnic groups and languages, struggled to maintain unity, eventually dissolving under nationalist pressures. Modern superpowers must carefully manage diversity and ensure that shared values or goals create societal stability. Another subtle but decisive factor is leadership. The quality, vision, and adaptability of leaders can delay or accelerate decline. Strong, strategic leadership can address systemic issues, manage crises, and inspire populations, while weak or corrupt leaders exacerbate existing problems. Historical analysis shows that periods of decline often coincide with ineffective leadership, as in the later years of the Roman Empire, where a series of short-lived or incompetent emperors undermined stability. Psychological fatigue among citizens also matters. Societies under constant pressure, whether from war, economic hardship, or political instability, experience declining morale and civic engagement. A population that feels overburdened or disconnected from national goals becomes less resilient to crises. When combined with other structural weaknesses, societal fatigue can hasten the fall of a superpower. Finally, globalization and interconnectedness play a modern role. Unlike historical empires that were relatively isolated, today's superpowers operate in a highly interconnected world. Economic shocks, pandemics, and international conflicts ripple across borders. A superpower cannot collapse in isolation. Global interdependence means that vulnerabilities are amplified, and recovery requires complex coordination. So, if we step back and look at all these factors together, a pattern emerges. Superpowers rise through a combination of economic strength, military dominance, technological innovation, and cultural influence. But their fall is rarely sudden. It's the cumulative effect of internal weaknesses, external pressures, overconfidence, and mismanagement. History is remarkably consistent in showing that no empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to decline. What lessons can we draw from this? For nations, it's a warning to maintain economic balance, invest in innovation, manage resources wisely, and nurture social cohesion. For individuals, there's a symbolic parallel. Organizations, communities, and even personal endeavors can experience similar cycles of rise and decline. Recognizing early signs of stress, adapting to change, and avoiding complacency are critical strategies for longevity. Ultimately, the story of superpowers is a story of impermanence. Every empire that dominates in one era inevitably faces challenges in the next. The rise and fall of nations is not merely about military might or territorial control, it's about sustainability, resilience, and the human factors that shape societies. By understanding why superpowers fall, we gain insight not only into history but also into the future. As we watch the current global landscape, the lessons of past empires are more relevant than ever. Economic competition, technological disruption, demographic shifts, and political polarization all echo the challenges faced by historical superpowers. The question isn't whether decline will happen, it is whether it can be delayed or mitigated through foresight, adaptability, and prudent leadership. Superpowers may fall, but the patterns they leave behind offer a roadmap for those who wish to understand power, influence, and human civilization itself. The rise and fall of empires reminds us that strength is temporary, stability is fragile, and vigilance is essential. And so, whether we are historians, policymakers, or simply curious observers, studying the decline of superpowers provides lessons that transcend time. The real reason they always fall is not just one factor, but a complex interplay of economics, politics, society, leadership, and human psychology. Recognizing these factors helps us appreciate the delicate balance required to sustain greatness and the inevitability of change in a world defined by both opportunity and risk. The story of superpowers is far from over. Today's global giants face challenges unseen by empires of the past, but the patterns remain. By understanding history, we prepare ourselves to navigate the future, whether we are shaping nations, organizations, or our own lives. The rise and fall of superpowers is a mirror reflecting the transient nature of power itself, a lesson that resonates across centuries, reminding us that nothing, not even the mightiest, lasts forever.